Ladies and gentlemen, still a good late morning here in Tianjin, and warm welcome to all of you to this closing segment, closing session of the 16th annual meeting of the New Champions. I'm Mirek Dušek, I'm with the World Economic Forum. So this brief conversation at the conclusion of this meeting always has this very simple objective to look back at the 3 days of proceedings, deliberations, experimentations here in Tianjin, but crucially to look at signals, weak and strong, insights, sources of foresight and inspiration that can help us a little bit as we navigate the changing world economy. So I'm very glad that for this objective, this endeavor, I am joined by leaders here that have engaged, all of you have engaged in the program here in Tianjin. You're all very relevant to the different work streams that we had here, and many of you, of course, are working with the World Economic Forum in a long-standing capacity, and thank you for your engagement. So let me first introduce you. A warm welcome to Paula Ingabire, Minister of Communication, Technology and Innovation of Rwanda. Warm welcome. I'd like to also welcome on stage here Adam Tooze, Director of the European Institute at Columbia University. Warm welcome. I'd like to welcome here Haojun, founder and CEO, Deep Principle China. Warm welcome. Warm welcome also to Stephanie Riady, CEO, Pelita, Harapan Group, Lippo Group, Indonesia. Last but not least, Cheryl, co-founder and CEO, Bota, Biosciences, China. Warm welcome to you as well. I'd like to go to the theme of this session and the overall summit, entrepreneurship for a new era. A lot of people are now saying, okay, this is a new era for the world economy, for the world. For a lot of other people, it can be quite disorienting. It can put you off balance. You don't really know how to navigate this, how to make sense of it. And sometimes people in those situations still go back to history and they are trying to find anchor points, reference points. Adam, you are a preeminent economic historian. Help us understand what would be your reference points that would help us through this fog.
Well, thank you for that question and good morning. May I just briefly seize this opportunity to say thank you to the forum and to the organizers locally and to our host in China for a spectacular event. It's always a great pleasure to do these, and we don't get enough opportunities to thank you for the work that goes into it. I've been struggling with this question all day long. The kind of classic role of the historian is to throw cold water on the idea of novelty and of radical change. I even heard former Prime Minister Tony Blair at the Igwell do this. You know, he was saying that through his long experience of power conversations, he's never been to one in which people didn't claim that the current moment was radically new. That's right. And it's kind of trivially true that that's always the case. But I'm actually going to break a lance. I'm going to argue for the idea that we really are in a new epoch of transformation, especially entrepreneurially driven innovation. And sitting on this panel here just confirms me in that conviction this morning for 3 reasons. Because the types of innovations that we're talking about in the current moment touch the deepest foundations of our existence as a species on the planet, no less. At one level, they address the energy system. We are literally in the process of transitioning from being hunter-gatherers of fossil fuels to being farmers of renewable energy, and supplying those through electricity networks in a highly sophisticated way rather than digging up coal and burning it in our own fireplaces proverbially. This is a fundamental shift in the history of our species. It's like the Neolithic move to farming away from hunter-gathering. And this is very dramatic. It has hugely transformative effects. The AI revolution affects what I'm doing right now. It's how we speak. It's literally about symbol manipulation. Even if it's not about thinking, it's about how we express thinking. You can't imagine a level of transformation deeper than that. The second level of historic break is that this affects far more people than ever before. It affects, give or take, the entire population of the planet. There may be isolated communities, I was hearing about them earlier, in the Indonesian archipelago, which are remote from this yet. There are certain parts of Central Africa which are not yet touched, but the vast majority of the African population is actually beginning to get online rapidly. So this is a process of transformation that affects a far wider slice of the world more rapidly than any previous transformation has. And the third reason, I think, for a kind of radical novelty and shock is that the sources of innovation are so much more radically diverse than they were before. I mean, to put it crudely, for most of the history of technology, it was people that looked and sounded like me that drove the process, white men in Europe and the United States. It's a sad but I think inescapable fact. And it's an incredibly limited group of the human species and the human collective mind. And the extraordinary situation we currently face is that we are close to the point where half of every global cohort of young people enters education. Across the entire planet, half of all young people. And if that doesn't make you optimistic, I just generally don't know what would. Because that really means that we are opening up sources of innovation which are explosively larger. And of course, all of those minds combine with each other in networks which are vastly greater. I come out of a molecular biology family, first generation Jim Watson double helix. The drivers of molecular biology innovation now are in Asia. All of the big conferences are China-centered. You can't escape it. And so those three dimensions, to me, as a historian, suggest that at this moment, history's job is to say, it's different. These times are different. And if we're feeling disorientated, as Graham Allison, my dear colleague, says, if you're feeling disorientated, it's a good sign. Because if you're not, you haven't been paying attention.
Thank you. And maybe just a quick follow-up question. A lot of people, and we spent some time on this here as well, would still think that maybe geopolitics and the fragmentation that we're seeing in the international system is kind of getting in the way of some of these epochal opportunities.
I mean, we shouldn't ignore the capacity of human frailty, vanity to disrupt the other tendencies of human development. But I also don't think we should exaggerate it. And above all, we shouldn't allow ourselves to be dragged into what at this point, I think, has to be described as something akin to attention-seeking behavior on behalf of the American leadership. It's not clear to me that it even corresponds to a rational strategy of American self-interest, even in the narrowest form. The vast majority of Americans here are just embarrassed and confused by what's going on and can no more than any of you point to a clear point of decision or a logic behind it. So that, I think, is a local problem. My general sense, if you look at the trade data, the information flows, is that that massive disruption is not happening. The rather more compelling logic is that the obvious interest, collective interest in acting together and linking minds, linking trade flows, linking cultures is overwhelmingly predominant, in fact, in the current moment.
Thank you. And maybe just a final thing for a quick reaction. You're a longstanding scholar of the energy transition. You've been coming here to China to study it as well. And again, a lot of people will point to some of these power relations in the world right now as possibly putting us off track in terms of how we are able to address the shared challenge of climate change. Where are you on that spectrum of pessimism, optimism on that question? Can we make it?
It goes back to the same issue, which is that started out, climate crisis to me was the last big Western problem. It was Western scientists that defined it. We defined ourselves as the main culprits. The reality of the world in the 2020s is that it is a Africa, Asia, that's where the crisis is located. The main drivers of emissions growth are in the emerging markets as well, and the main solutions are coming from China on a spectacular scale. And it's a sign, I think, of the abdication of global leadership on the part of West that we're huffing and puffing and making it so difficult to rapidly absorb the technological genius, the technological learning curve effects which China has generated. That's where the solution lies. Look at, for instance, the PV imports of a Pakistan or South Africa last year, this transformative capacity of China now to deliver gigawatts of power for decentralized production. at incredibly affordable prices, even for low-income and emerging market economies. That's insofar as there is a fix, as there's ever been a hope. It comes from there. It's no silver bullet. It's no guarantee.
Yeah.
But it is world historic in moving this from a problem we could diagnose and describe and think about to one that we might actually be able to address.
Thank you. Moving to Paula Ingabire, Minister of Communication, Technology and Innovation of Rwanda. Rwanda and your government overall, you've always been on the front foot of supporting innovation and entrepreneurship. You've been also engaged in some of the proceedings here on that topic. What would be your key learnings? But I think also just this intersection of governments and entrepreneurs. What are the things that you are proud of or you think it's working quite well? But are there also things that we could just completely reinvent so that governments can better enable entrepreneurs in the future?
Thank you very much, Mirek. Let me start off echoing what Adam said by thanking the forum for hosting a very successful Summer Davos, and also thanking the forum because they've been great partners for Rwanda, even in some of the different initiatives that we've undertaken when it comes to entrepreneurship and innovation. But very particularly, I think as we speak about entrepreneurship and innovation, both do not happen in a vacuum. Both are very much dependent on having the right policy environment in place, thinking about the infrastructure that is going to support entrepreneurs and innovators, and also the regulatory side of things. And this is the role that governments as a whole, continue to play globally. And so particularly for Rwanda, even as we think about entrepreneurship and innovation, we've crafted a very simple strategy, which is really becoming a proof of concept country where we're able to test different entrepreneurial and innovative ideas in a way that responds to societal problems, but in a way that also harnesses the entrepreneurial spirit and talent that we have within the economy. And as we think about what's next and what that looks like, I'll particularly pick on some of the points that you were just alluding to with Adam around what we see as the evolving role of artificial intelligence in really making sure that countries can really make the most out of it. And obviously, what we see is that for many, there's always, the tension between what are some of the societal implications. Is it really worth it to invest in artificial intelligence? And what we've chosen as Rwanda as a country is to figure out, one, what are some of the growth drivers for our economy? And do we see AI playing a fundamental role in enabling that? We've been primarily an agrarian economy, transitioning towards service-based economy. And part of that is understanding how we modernize agriculture, how we think about technologies like AI that will help in improving productivity and modernizing agriculture. The service economy becomes a key growth driver for us as well. And so to do that, we did an assessment of where we think AI is going to generate tangible benefits. We've already estimated a 5% GDP contribution in how we deploy AI and really becoming an early adopter of different technologies, but that will require that we skill the workforce. It will require that we put in place ethical frameworks for deployment, design, and use of AI. But at the same time, it will require that we are collaborating with everyone on the continent, because we can't evolve or even develop in isolation of what's happening within the region. And that's why, maybe closing off on this, we were able to host the first Global AI Summit, and thanks to the forum for really supporting the efforts around that. And what it has birthed is an effort across the continent that allows us to work together to put in place the necessary environment for AI adoption to happen in Africa.
No, thank you, and thank you for the partnership on the AI Summit that you hosted. You mentioned collaboration, and so obviously we are seeing that technology and AI can be this great enabler of progress and development. But of course, it's also, we see the adjective sovereign being deployed a lot around technology. And so as you work on these technologies and making sure that they really benefit your people, how does, again, this geoeconomic kind of environment, which is geopolitical, seeping into the technological environment as well? Do you have hope that maybe in the future there is more structure around how your country and other countries can just benefit from all the technologies that are available without getting into complex situations on the geopolitical front?
Absolutely. I think the starting point is understanding that as we think about AI that benefits all, we must be collectively, as a global family, think about how we democratize access to AI. And that means access to compute infrastructure, making sure we are thinking about open data sets across the board, dealing with issues around bias in algorithms. What does that mean? What kind of data are we using to train these different models? And I think that's where the question of sovereignty comes in, because you're thinking about data, you're also thinking about compute infrastructure. But I'm very optimistic, and this is where we're very much looking to creating a regional effort, because if every country is going to think about data sovereignty and infrastructure on its own, it's probably going to take many years before we can unlock that. But coming together as a region, as an African bloc, in many ways unlocks for some of these challenges that we're all facing across the board, and we're seeing the EU leading in that space, and so being able to figure out what is going to make sense for us to build that capability across the board.
Minister, thank you. Moving to Haojun, founder and CEO, Deep Principle China. So you're representing the cohort of innovators that makes this meeting so special every year. You are a AI-first materials company. You started a year ago. And now you are already recognized as a key player, a key leader in this domain. So maybe talk a little bit about your company, what it does, but then we can extrapolate from it. What does it actually mean? What does AI actually mean to chemistry, material science? And also, how do we take it from the lab to scale it in industry?
Okay, thank you. Very glad to be here in the closing panel. My name is Haojun. I'm a founder and CEO of Deep Principle. Deep Principle is an AI for chemistry and a material startup. We find new materials, for example, including converting greenhouse gas to energy, and by applying AI and quantum to chemistry. So, for example, traditionally, experiments should go through trial and error process in wet lab to test the property of materials. Currently, we can directly use the generative model, for example, diffusion model, to directly generate the chemical reaction and the materials based on people's need.
And what is your ambition? I'm sure you have the ambition to, and you described it to me, that a lot of it is now, of course, really more research. How do you take it to scale, and are you optimistic that in, let's say, 5 years, you're going to be a behemoth in terms of the materials industry?
Yeah, as an entrepreneur, I'm very optimistic. And also the reason why we back to China to do this AI for material startup is because the Chinese industrial capacity, and especially for material science and chemical engineering, because once we find a good candidate of material or molecular in lab, we need to scale up for later application. China is the best place, in my opinion. Yeah.
I asked you earlier, how do you see the overall discipline again in 5 years? And you said it depends on whether there is AGI or not. Could you elaborate a little bit?
Yeah. So the reason why I'm thinking about it a little bit longer, because when I'm thinking if 2022 the ChatGPT now came out, what is happening from now? Yeah. So for my opinion is that if in the 5 years AGI is not happens, so something can be relatively linear or it's a little bit exponential. But if AGI came out, everything will change a lot. And this is something very hard to predict. A lot of people predict what's the reason and how AGI came out. So, but I think this is very hard to predict. The only thing we can do is prepare ourselves.
Throughout this meeting, and the way we thought about it also, is that there is just so much attention now being paid to just understanding how the Chinese high-tech innovation ecosystem actually works, what are the unique features. So you and your co-founder, you graduated from MIT, but now you're scaling here. and you're old. So what would be the unique attributes if you were to describe of the Chinese ecosystem here? Why are you scaling here?
Yeah, the first thing I think the iteration is pretty fast over here. For example, like Pinduoduo, it can directly iterate its feedback, the product based on instant feedback of the user, and currently it's dominates in the e-commerce. Secondly, for example, in Shenzhen, the strong capacity of the manufacturing. In one day, you can make some 3C electronic prototypes, and in a few weeks, it can go mass production. These kind of things together can make something incredible.
And the final thing, going back to the bigger picture of entrepreneurship, what you think will have to be top of mind for entrepreneurs to be successful going forward? What are the new things that they need to pay attention to that maybe they didn't have to deal with up until now?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things you need to pay attention. The first thing about the startup, I think all about startup is about the value creation. So you need to very clearly know what's your value proposition, and after that, you need to step back on something not your core value and put more energy and resource on the most important thing. And secondly, so as a startup, we need to care about our runway. You have different scenario planning and have a lot of things in mind. And lastly, I think speed is one of the important things because current technology evolves rapidly and the external environment also changes dramatically. As an entrepreneur, we need to move fast.
Thank you. I'd like to go to Cheryl Tooze, co-founder and CEO, Bota Biosciences, biotech, bioeconomy. We've now talked about AI, ChatGPT, and obviously, AI has been around for a while. The ChatGPT moment was a wake-up call overall to the general public around the discipline of AI. Obviously, it's specifically around Gen AI, but it was also this larger wake-up call. So in biosciences, in the bioeconomy, where do you see this moment? Are we going to have that moment where your discipline also is going to be, there's going to be this wake-up call around the potential in the general public, the ChatGPT moment for the bioeconomy?
Yes, I think that, thanks for the question. And I think for the GPT moment, it's the moment that there's actual breakthrough. And then it has demonstrated extraordinary capabilities that beyond people's imagination. And for bioeconomy, and in this case, we're talking about how to transition from the traditional ways of manufacturing into bio-based processes and offering green solutions to the manufacturing practices, and with the biotechnology as the foundation. I think there are already moments in history that we have demonstrated that. It's the discovery of antibiotics, it's the discovery of many of the cancer drugs. Those are in the healthcare domain. And then I think now with the accessibility of the biotechnology, we look forward to have more impact in the industry. So it's really become an impact that you can see in everyday's life. It goes from the food that we eat to the lotions that we use. And I think that it becomes more accessible as you can see products on the shelf that are manufactured in the more sustainable ways. Yeah.
When we talked a little bit before, you also say you said we should not only talk about the ChatGPT moment, we should talk about the DeepSeek moment for the bioeconomy. So again, more around more maybe efficient, less resource heavy, more accessible. What would that look like? Or is that already here?
Yeah. I think, there's the GPT moment and there's a DeepSeek moment. It represents, I think one represents breakthrough, and then the other one represents accessibility. And I think it also has another deeper meaning. I think it happened beginning of 2025, is how a group of young and talented engineers have the courage to tackle a very challenging problem despite the limitations in resources. And I think it's the courage and the ambition made it quite unique. And it just happened to be in China, because I do think that, going back to some of the point that Haojun was addressing, is it has been an environment that cultivating ambition and also mission. So I think that's why it drives some of the entrepreneurs to innovate in China. And we hope that we can see more innovations like this globally. And we can always, challenge the unchallenged. And then I think that's the spirit for our entrepreneurship.
What would be the competitive advantages of the bioeconomy in China globally? What do you think are the distinguishing features?
It definitely goes with the speed, because when we innovate, we want to iterate fast. And then it does need to have the infrastructure set up for industrial innovations. And that's working with the vendor that's willing to customize the equipment, and then to have working with the many of the stakeholders in this area rapidly and efficiently. So I think that's a major point for innovation. And I think another thing for us is that we have been thinking about biotech as a premium. Bio-based solutions or sustainable solutions is more expensive. And we wanted to change that. We wanted to be more accessible with better quality and with better safety and better function. I think that's why I think we decided to come back to China. I'm about 5 years ahead of Haojun, also moving back from Boston. And then now we're going through the lab to the manufacturing, like lab to market transition. So it has been a very interesting journey so far.
Thank you. Stephanie Riady, CEO, Pelita Harapan Group, Lippo Group Indonesia. So it's a diversified conglomerate in Indonesia. Your country has 280 million people, almost half are under the age of 30, so huge demographic dividend. You have still a relatively new president, President Prabowo. He has an ambitious target of 8% economic growth by 2029. I recently visited. It's really quite impressive to watch the dynamism in your country. But speaking about the people at the core of this transformation, we are moving, and we are already in an innovation-driven economic era. So obviously skills are extremely important to be able to support that new era. You are heading the axis within the company that looks at schools. So it's a huge complex of schools in urban and rural areas. So what are the things that you're seeing? How are you both deploying technology, including AI, in education and skilling, but also what are the skills that you think we need to add to the curricula that would serve particularly your people well as they build this innovation-driven economy in Indonesia?
Thank you for the question, Mirek, and it's a pleasure to be here. Higher education is often notorious for being behind the curve in terms of education, and so being here to learn about the most cutting-edge developments in the world is really eye-opening for me, so thank you very much. In Indonesia, I think there's not a more exciting time than now. We see that all of our sectors, be it mining or be it agriculture or manufacturing, is going through tremendous changes and growing very quickly because of the use of technology that's able to improve productivity and also efficiency. At the same time, we also see from a human capital standpoint the importance of making sure that the people of Indonesia can continue to keep up and participate in the growing economy. So that is our challenge. And we know, statistically speaking, that if the half-life of a skill in the past was 10 years, today it's 5 years and arguably 2.5 years when it comes to technology. And so we have to prepare future leaders who are able to adapt to the fast-changing nature of this world today. Now in Indonesia, I think there's a lot of potential. We have a young population, but it's important for education to continue to be inclusive. For example, we see that with the implementation of technology, a lot of people get excluded, including the digital divide, where people who don't have access to technology or don't have access to bandwidth, are excluded from the economy. We see a lot of communities, which I was sharing to some panelists today, that are very left behind. Some of them not even having the numerical words for numbers beyond the number 3, or not knowing, being exposed to the larger world until year 2000. These are very rural communities in Indonesia that also need to be paid attention to so that they can contribute meaningfully to the economy. And so our role is to make sure that no one gets left behind. And we are a private education enterprise that supports also the government, works together with the Ministry of Education to ensure that we try our best to bring quality education throughout Indonesia. Now, some of the ways that we continue to keep up with cutting edge education, the most relevant education is at the higher education level, to continue to partner with companies that are at the forefront of these changes and development. For example, when it comes to artificial intelligence, we know that it changes very quickly. So to partner with a university in China, like Zhejiang University, to get the know-how is very important for us. And so at the K-12 level, we also know that it's important to focus beyond just knowledge or skills, because again, the shelf life of those knowledge and skills are very short. But we also know from the report of the World Economic Forum, Future of Jobs, for example, that there are key skills that need to be instilled in the students. Those skills include adaptability. Those skills include flexibility, agility, analytical thinking. These are the kinds of skills that we should be focusing on in the to equip our students to be to contribute meaningfully to the economy in the future.
Stephanie, thank you so much. We are at the end of this short conversation. Let's give them an applause. Thank you so much. We have obviously only scratched the surface, but hopefully at least we highlighted certain things that can be useful to all of you as you go forward from this summit. Now, please stay seated. We will still have some closing remarks, so we need 2 minutes to change the stage. So thank you so much.